Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our first fully live UIW Alumni Red Talk. I'm Dr. Lisa McNary, Dean of Alumni and Parent Relations. We have a treat for you this evening. For our 8th Red Talk, we have District 13 Councilwoman for the City of Dallas, Jennifer Staubach Gates. Feel free to ask your questions throughout the presentation by leaving your comment in the section below. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jennifer now. Her focus is on improving the everyday life of her taxpayers and families through improving streets and parks, strengthening police and fire protection, and discovering ways to help their public schools. Serving as chair of the Government Performance and Financial Management Committee, she is committed to reducing government expenses and providing adequate public safety and infrastructure dollars. While serving on the Ad Hoc Committee on Administrative Affairs, Quality of Life, Arts, Culture, and Libraries, and the Public Safety Committee, she works hard to enhance her city's culture and continues to keep the community safe. In addition to serving on these committees, she is honored to be the chair of the Domestic Violence Task Force and the co-chair of the Cultural Tourism Committee of Visit Dallas. Jennifer received her bachelor's degree in nursing from Incarnate Word in 1988 and received the Distinguished Alumni of Distinction Award for Service in Mission in 2014. Let's welcome Jennifer Staubach Gates. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And welcome to everybody that's joining us. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to join you tonight. To set the stage for my talk, I will begin with a brief background of who I am and a description of my current role in the City of Dallas. I was raised here in Dallas in a loving family. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I was educated in the Catholic school system in Dallas, and a little bit unconventional for my peers. I married young, right out of high school, John. We've been married now over 36 years. And we started a family while simultaneously going through college. We have 2 daughters now, Jessica, who was born there in San Antonio, and Jordan. Jessica's a stay-at-home mom to our 3 wonderful grandsons. And Jordan is a social worker here in Dallas, working in the domestic violence world. But as you heard earlier, I'm an 88 graduate of Incarnate Word, and I found that an incredibly supportive and exceptional experience for me as a nurse. I practiced nursing primarily in the pediatrics realm, both for a pediatrician and eventually as a school nurse, a little bit of hospital nursing as well. And John and I, we came back to Dallas in 1990, and we've been, here since then, raising our family and serving the community. And I've always, after I did stay home after our second daughter, and I started a lot of service in kind of areas that I felt I was called, where I helped a lot of organizations with those helping special needs, using my medical background, but I also worked within the Catholic schools and supporting my children in activities as Girl Scout leaders and such that they were involved in. But an opportunity arose in 2012, and it really wasn't on my radar. A friend had read it in the paper and had heard me talk about maybe an interest in politics, but I kind of put it on the back burner. But it was an open seat for our district, which is District 13 and City of Dallas. And it was kind of a surprise. Somebody had not served out all their term limits. And I would say I kind of naively jumped into the race. It was a lot of hard work. It was 5 months, 35 meet and greets, 15 debates, countless events, miles of walking, door walking or block walking. And then I was elected into office in the spring of 2013, where I am now representing over 89,000 people, over 23 square miles, and a very diverse population, from some of the most affluent to some of the poorest of Dallas residents. And I now find myself in the last of my 4 two-year terms, and boy, has it really been a ride over the last 7 years. I think I've earned kind of a badge related to crisis management. I had the first U.S. Ebola case was in my district back in 2014. Had to put my nurse hat back on and really step into that role of advocating for the Vickery Meadow community, which was hard hit by that first case and the consequences of having that patient hospitalized and passing away in that area. I served, we had a Dallas Police and Fire pension crisis. I was on the board shepherding our city and a legislative fix for that. We witnessed a senseless murder of 5 of our law enforcement police officers during a downtown protest several years ago. We've had a gas explosion right outside of my district that led to large evacuations for over a month. We struggled with our Confederate statues and eventual removals in the city of Dallas, which was quite controversial and very heated. We had a bribery scandal at City Hall, and one of my colleagues ended up pleading guilty and ended up going to jail over it, which, as you can imagine, just kind of shakes all those at City Hall that were having to live through and endure that. And then now we've had 2020, which has been dominated by the COVID and the civil unrest, which we're seeing throughout the country. All while I'm still trying hard to serve my constituents' varied needs. I like to tell a story. My husband heard me on the phone one day. We were in the car, and I was, returning phone calls related to constituent phone calls and also talking to city staff. And I went from talking to someone about 8 dead squirrels in her backyard to, at the time, that $2 billion pension deficit crisis that we were trying to manage. So as you can see, my scope of work is varied and very large. And I've had the opportunity, as you may heard, to serve as a committee chair. Actually, I've just been moved from the government performance and financial management chair to now a public safety chair. And so I've had those leadership roles throughout my 7 years that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and the committee work involved in those. We've had several zoning cases in my district, which bring out a lot of emotion, and sometimes not the best in people when things are changing around them. And we've worked through a big bond package. And then I've had, the fun things that you get to do as a council member, lots of groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and park dedications. With these 3 little grandsons, I like to, the youngest is only 1, so he hasn't been able to join me because he's pretty much, his whole life has been COVID. But the bigger boys who are 5 and 7, I take them along and really to show them the kind of the Dallas that I grew up loving and wanted to serve, and want them to do the same. One day I asked the oldest, I said, "Hey, you want to attend a groundbreaking with me?" And he said it was his first groundbreaking. He wasn't quite sure what a groundbreaking was. And he had attended several ribbon cuttings. I said, "Well, this is actually what happens before a ribbon cutting." And he looked at me, he said, "Oh, Grandma, I'm really good at cutting ribbons. I'm sure I'll be good at groundbreaking as well." So those are the kind of the fun things I've been able to share, and the joy of leading in this role and with my family. But now that you understand a little bit of what I do, you might ask, what led a nurse into elected office? And why did I jump into this crazy world of politics at this time in my life? And at first, I think it's, I kind of reflect on why myself did I make all those decisions. And it's really I am not adverse to a new challenge and experience. I also kind of embraced my past experiences, both negative and positive, and leaned really on my nursing education, surprise, surprise, because of some of the crises that now I've dealt with in my district. But I realized that my both good and bad in my past, those different types of experiences all help prepare me to serve as an elected official. But let's start with how I got elected, and which is the campaigning part, which really is not really not my favorite, or really something I enjoyed. It's not the fun part of the job, but it's hard. I said campaigning is really, it's tiring, it's trying, it's tedious. But in the end, I found that my past work and relationships that I had built over time and the community I was part of lifted me up. I didn't realize when you have a track record of working on projects or working with people, they'll rally around you and they'll work to help get you elected. My friends, I felt like they came out of the woodwork. My family was probably a little more reluctant because nobody likes really block walking and hitting the campaign trail, but they all participated, and they all stood behind me. And I knew it was the trust they had in my past leadership that led them to support me going forward. I also found that standing as your authentic self and not compromising your values is really what people are looking for. And it really takes your own examination, a process of examining, what are my values and how I'm going to utilize those to serve. It requires a lot of listening to others, listening to, I had to take advice from consultants to how to run a campaign, but at the same time, I needed them to allow me to be the authentic self I was. I was a nurse, I was a volunteer, a mom, a daughter, a sister, and I had to, I needed to be proud of that and present that and not try to be something somebody else might be looking for. You can't have success being something you're not, and you need to make sure that everybody understands who you are. Being honest, and admitting at times if I didn't know an answer that I didn't know that answer, but I would work hard to find out. And I would, I'll give you an example. That was in a debate, and somebody asked, can you just share an experience where you thought out of the box? And it didn't really have to be related to government or governing, but I thought, when have I done that? And I went right back to my nursing experience of being a school nurse, finding lice, and immediately people could react because of what everybody, so many homes have been impacted by a lice outbreak, and the kids, I was at a Catholic school, so immediately I'd find one child, and of course they would usually have siblings, and then it would, quickly I had to check not just one class of the first person, but the class of the sibling and the next class, and I thought, how am I going to get through the 200 heads I need to check today for lice? And it's like, all those moms that I knew that had been impacted, I started calling and saying, I need your help. I need you to come up. And we, just rally the troops to get through the day. And that's why you have to be nimble, and you have to be able to, willing to kind of think, where are my resources and what do I need to be pulling on? I knew and quickly I wasn't going to be able to be an expert in all areas of government, but I could be, because you're going to have to make decisions on, things that you've never even heard about, how, water's delivered in streets and the aviation department. But I had to be able to convince and articulate that, I'm not going to be an expert on that, but I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to make informed decisions. Hard work always plays a part. You got to work harder to achieve that than your opponent in a campaign. And as you know, if those activities or how many miles you walk or how many events you do, all that in the end pays off. Being effective in your communication skills, being able to articulate and clarify your position on issues, and building trust. Building trust with the voters, and so they could have the faith in my judgment. In the end, of the campaign process, I will say you learn a lot about yourself, your friends, and your family, and that experience and that journey is well worth the pain. And win or lose, it ends up being an experience that I wouldn't. Didn't love it, but I think I'm glad I experienced it and I learned a lot. So now I kind of move from how you get there, how you work through a campaign, to then how do you become effective. And I will say, in full disclosure, I try my hardest, but at times I'm going to fail. But I'm going to share with you the guidelines and principles that I attempt to achieve. And it really is going to go back to how beginning as a nurse, and my nursing education and experience taught me how to make informed and educated decisions and to act with compassion and care for the whole person. And then I would say the next, that's kind of the basis that I start at. And then in any situation, making sure that I fully understand the situation and my role and responsibility. Back in 2014, when I got the call from the mayor that a patient or a resident in the Vickery Meadow neighborhood had been taken to the hospital and suspected of having Ebola, we had no real game plan or playbook that we could follow. And I was like, what is my responsibility as a council member? I wasn't the mayor. We had the CDC and obviously other government agencies involved, but what was going to be my role? And in that first meeting, and within hours, the mayor took me with him to a meeting at the hospital where the patient was, and we gathered. And I was the one person in that room, and the governor was there, and the CDC was there, and the hospital officials, and other elected officials. And I was the one individual that understood that community. And I knew how to communicate. It was a densely populated 3.5 square miles, 110 multifamily complexes. They spoke 40 different languages in the neighborhood. It was immigrants and refugees, but I already had a network of nonprofits that I had relationships with that worked in that area. And I knew my role at that point was going to be able to advocate for those residents, and then help everybody that was involved in the situation understand that community and how they got around and where they worked, and how the importance of translating all the materials to help better educate them. So it was really making sure that when you are in a situation that you defined your own role and responsibility. And as I mentioned, making sure that you've gathered all the information possible from as many multiple resources and talk to people on all sides. It's whenever you're faced with the decision-making process, I think it's always important that you talk to as many people and you hear all sides of the issue. I always like to explore unintended consequences and ask the tough questions, like, what is the other side of this issue? Who is going to be most impacted? If there's going to be opposition to an issue, what is the basis for that opposition? Look ahead before taking a position to make sure you fully understand all the dimensions. Finding common ground with your colleagues I found very effective. Starting, you might go at things very differently, but then recognizing, look, if it's a public safety issue, we're both putting the public safety first. We might disagree on how to get there, But let's start by acknowledging that we have the same end goal. And then it allows for compromise and coming up with a solution that can benefit both of you. And establishing the trust with your colleagues. At the city council, there's 14 council members and 1 mayor that's elected at large, and we're all elected through our districts. And, so to get something done, you have to be able to count to 8. You have to get 8 votes. And establishing that trust with your colleagues and them understanding why you're taking a position or why you're making a vote, not playing games, power struggles. And recognizing that you are going to need each other at different times and help from each other on different issues, and avoiding personal attacks. It's important to really recognize how to advocate and then who needs the advocacy. My district is very diverse. As I mentioned earlier, I have very affluent neighbors who are really great about letting me know what their needs are and when there's code violations or when there's need of street repairs or whatever it might be. But I have the area that I mentioned earlier, Vickery Meadow, where the residents, they might not trust government, and they don't. They may be a fear of reporting code in their apartments violations due to retaliation. So it's a different type of advocacy. I have to be proactive in one area where I know I have other residents that are going to keep me informed and updated on what needs to be done in their community. I remind myself often that politics is real work. It's not entertainment. And I think too often we see that and prevalent, that people want to be entertained by their politicians, and that's not our role. Our role is to provide a public service, provide the city services at my level that you're paying your taxes for, and it's not about entertainment. I've recognized over time that it's often harder to get to yes than it is by just saying no. Often when you're forced with helping shepherd a zoning case through, you really need to bring everybody on board in the community or in the neighborhood and discuss what, the benefits of changing or remaining the same. Sometimes it's easier just to say no. It's too hard to try to find the right, the perfect project that's going to be accepted by all. But it's, change is needed. We have a lot of old infrastructure, and we have to be a progressive city. We have to be able to grow and change and be able to meet all the amenities needs of a community. And so, I've definitely over the time recognize people don't like change. Even if it's a benefit or an amenity like a trail, they may be worried about having it in their backyard. So working with them and then talking about the benefits. I had a long trail that we were implementing, and it would have probably been easier just to say, this is maybe too much work to figure out how it's going to the alignment. But in the end, working through the process and all that hard work paid off. I also find it extremely important that as a elected official that I recognize my responsibility on leading and the power of influence, and that you have to be cognizant of that, and you have to lead with respect and lead in a direction. You're going to have followers, and that is a responsibility, and you shouldn't take it lightly. The importance of the role of communication. People want to, they want to be informed. They want to understand what's going on in their environment. In Dallas, we had a horrible tornado that ripped through my district last year. There was really little I could do directly. We had the direct city services that were being provided for the cleanup and restoration of the electricity, But what I found was most helpful is just constant communication, making sure those channels were open between the constituents and my office and city resources, and that they had an expectation of when they could expect the cleanup trucks on their street, the sanitation trucks, or when that they could expect the restoration of electricity. That people function better knowing, even if it's not great news, it's not going to happen today, but just knowing when it's going to happen and being informed. And then lastly, I would say social media. It doesn't speak to the whole or for the whole, and is really often not representative of mainstream thinking or of the community at whole. And that's hard sometimes because that's what we're getting bombarded with, and everybody's upset, or this is on Nextdoor, or this is on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it might be. We have to kind of be able to filter that and know that there's probably the largest percentage of the population that's just going about their daily lives and not taking the time to let you know sometimes when bad things are happening or good things are happening, but that you just, the loud, those that are loudest are not always speaking for everyone. All right, I hope we can get to a conversation, and I can answer some questions so you can hear what you really want to hear. But so my last comments before kind of opening it up, and I that's kind of always my favorite part usually. I know this is so challenging in these settings. It feels kind of, I would much rather prefer to speak with people in the room so I can feel more engaged than speaking to my computer at home. But before I open it up, I would just, encourage all of you that transitions can be challenging and difficult, but they make you stronger. Your past experiences, both positive and negative, as well as your education, prepares you far better than you probably realize. I know mine did. And I encourage you to embrace and learn from those experiences. And don't be defined by negatives, like past failures or labels people have placed on you. And at the same time, don't rest on your laurels by allowing positive achievements or successes or titles or roles or honors define you either. There's always more work to do. And be grateful for your family and your friends that have encouraged you during your journey and through your endeavors. I know I don't do that enough. And too often I take for granted their love and support. So tell those, share kindness, tell those around you, especially during these times of COVID when we're so isolated, how much you love them and how much you appreciate their support. Work hard at whatever you're doing, no matter how simple the task may be or how complicated it might be. It will pay off. Your work will pay off. Be informed and prepared, and let your strengths and gifts shine. Service to others comes in many different ways and actions and through a lot of different roles. For me, I professionally was able to transition from nurse to public office. For you, it might be whatever you want it to be. But lean into change, embrace new experiences, and challenge yourself. And sometimes that means you're going to feel uncomfortable. But as long as you're being your authentic self and you're letting your actions and motivation be driven by the greater good, you will grow and you will make a difference. So thank you all. And Lisa, I'll kind of turn it back to you and facilitate questions.
It looks like we have a couple of watch parties going on too. There's a few questions here, and you might have touched on a few of them. I'm going to ask two.
I can see them, so.
Was there a life event that led to your decision for public service, and was there a specific individual or situation that influenced you to run for office? Two similar questions.
Yeah. When I kind of touched on that I had, I'd always been interested in politics. I had gotten involved in a couple of zoning cases, which zoning cases can often lead to a lot of emotion. And one was a neighborhood where in my neighborhood, they were looking at building a movie theater, a big, large movie theater, and I was opposed to it. So I got involved in that. The other one was where I went to high school, where my girls were at high school, was looking at a soccer field. And the neighbors were opposed to the soccer field. And so the council member opposed the field. And I thought, how unfair that girls can't play soccer, it's an all-girls school, on their campus, and yet the boys' schools down the road have big football stadiums. And it was the neighborhood, just didn't want it. And the council member at the time supported that and opposed it. So it didn't pass at council. So I think those events, I saw the influence of the neighborhood and the involvement, and that kind of spurred my interest. And at that time, I was pretty worked up about it. And so I thought, should I run for council? And it wasn't the right timing. My kids were younger then. My youngest was really young at that time. My oldest was in high school. But that's when I kind of put it on the back burner. But I think those events and seeing the need for change, what I believe was the change in my community, kind of spurred that decision or put it in the back of my mind. And then it really was a little bit random. The opportunity for this open seat, came, and it was, and I would say that I think if I thought about it much longer, I probably would have talked myself out of it. Mm-hmm. But because it was an opportunity and I needed to make a decision quickly, I really, I had the time, and I thought I had the skills, and my girls were both gone, not gone, but they were both out of the house. That's when I jumped in. So the timing was right, which I think, is important as well. Played a factor.
Now, Jennifer, we have just kicked off a UIW alumni mentoring program for our current students and young alumni. And you certainly have been a mentor to many people, whether you know it or not, throughout your career, from nursing and to politics. There was another question here. Who was your biggest inspiration throughout your career?
I would have to say my parents. I mean, my parents really were such a positive influence on me, and really were the ones that showed me the importance of service, and much is given, much is expected. So I think their influence was probably one of the greatest impact. I will say they're both as supportive as they are, having their daughter in politics and hearing the negative and the positive on a regular basis is challenging for them. So I have to remind them when they're like, stressed about any negative attention I may be receiving, that they're the ones that really were my driving force of service. And then, I was influenced a lot. I went to Ursuline here in Dallas, and the Serviam spirit, and I had just had some great mentors, faculty members, as well as the sisters, the Ursuline sisters were a big influence on me. And as the same, and it kind of continued. That's when I found my home at Incarnate Word. And as I mentioned, John and I were young parents, and I probably wouldn't have been able to make it through college without that support of that nurturing environment that I found at Incarnate Word. Jessica was young, and I could take her to class with me if needed, and she, it was a perfect fit for me, and it allowed me to, get a college degree in 4 years, and so there was a lot of influence, and I think that kind of support, the people that rallied around me and helped me, encouraged me then to do the same for others.
Okay, this actually is a good lead into the next question that came up is, do you have a favorite memory at UIW?
Yeah, I made some great friends, you know, in the nursing program, and we would have, you know, a lot of fun study nights. I mean, it was, you know, again, I was a you know, married student and not probably having the same traditional environment. My husband John was over at Trinity, and we did. I mean, we still had a lot of fun college nights, but I think some of my best Incarnate Word memories would, you know, would be over there studying with my friends, eating too many brownies and ice cream. So, and just building those friendships and having that support. And I, you know, you know, it was that time. I mean, I loved nursing school. I mean, I did well. I mean, I did okay in high school grade wise, but I really thrived at Incarnate Word. And I think it was because I was in an environment where I loved, I loved what I was studying, and I found my passion. And I think, you know, there's so many of those days and so much of that clinical that still comes back to me on a regular basis.
Okay, it looks like I have too many screens up. It looks like we have one more question.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. They're wondering if you can talk about City Hall involvement with the bullet train progress between Dallas and Houston. How about that?
Right. Right. Well, the city is limitedly involved. I mean, we're very supportive of the bullet train that is going to be the station in Dallas is going to be kind of in downtown Dallas, just right adjacent to where City Hall sits now. And we're really excited about it and supportive of. Again, it's not a city-driven project, but the environmental studies, we've been the government agency that sponsored those to kind of shepherd it through. And in Houston, it's going to be, I think the station is going to be it's not going to be downtown, but outside in the loop. And, you know, I think some of it slowed down a little bit because of COVID, but things are looking really positive. And I know Dallas and Houston are both extremely excited about the opportunity to be able to get back and forth in such a short amount of time, and the ease of a train versus having to, you know, go to an airport and all the, you know, logistics involved there. So I'm, you know, very, very supportive. The city's been, you know, it has not been controversial at a city level. I know there's been some opposition, but it's not been in the cities itself. It's been in where the alignment is in the rural areas. So but I'm feeling very positive, and I think, you know, we're still a few years out, but it's looking good.
It looks like that's all the questions that have come up. We certainly thank you for your service as a nurse and your service as a community leader, and you certainly are continuing to lead by example and holding the mission of Incarnate Word true to your heart, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you sharing with us tonight as well. I hope you enjoyed sharing with us this evening.
Well, I did. I mean, I miss being with everyone, but during these COVID times, it's important that we, you know, practice safe distancing, and we're all learning a little bit more about this virtual world. So hopefully you enjoy my message, and I enjoy being able to share it tonight.
And we thank all of you that have joined us this evening, and keep an eye out for our next Red Talk. Now, Jennifer's presentation will be up indefinitely, so you can catch her still on our Facebook page and on YouTube as well. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.
All right. Good night. Thanks.